I know what you're thinking. Finally, a tutorial on how to make a cloud that looks like a dinosaur. No, but in this tutorial, we're going to cover a lot of fun stuff that's going to go over R21's volume builder, VDBs, and then I'm going to show you how to use Redshift to make your cloud look really pretty and really cool. And this is just going to be able to take any object, turn it into a cloud or a VDB, and animation or still, so it's going to be really neat. Let's check it out. Okay, so for this tutorial, we're going to do something a little fun. It's kind of got some weird uses. It's definitely just an interesting thing I found out. You can create your own VDBs. Basically, you can make things look like clouds and render like clouds if you want. And so one thing that you need to know up front is this is not going to be a replacement for XParticle or Fume or Turbulence FD, one of those things. It's a simulation where you can run things and make smoke and stuff and have all the channels you need. But what this is going to do is let you make a custom object without all of those things and turn it into a cloud, which is pretty fun. It could be fun if you want to do something like my idea that popped in my head was when you're laying on your back looking up at the clouds and you're like, oh, that cloud looks like a Stegosaurus. So here we are with our Stegosaurus. Looks like a dinosaur, right? Or clouds look like all kinds of things. So now you can actually create that scene with clouds and put a cloud of whatever shape you want. And this could be text or anything you want, really. But there are limitations to it. The super thin things are gonna not, like, you're just not gonna have a spitting image of your object. You're gonna want an object with enough topology, though, to you're gonna want an object with enough topology that you're going to be able to run a displacer on it and have a nice clean result on that as well, because that's what we're going to use to create the cloud look as far as the shape of the object. The cool thing about this is you can do animations, you can do stills, you can do whatever you want, and the rules apply for each object, but each object is going to have to be handled differently on its own, but some things to keep in mind, and we'll go over that. So firstly, we've got the Stegosaurus, which is from our content browser in our 3D Objects Volume 2. This is from R21. If you're a subscriber to that, you have this option to download this. So the first thing I'm going to do is right-click this, and I'm going to say Select Children. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say Connect and Delete. So now we just have our one object, and I'm going to hold Alt and hit Subdivide, and that's going to add the subdivision to our Stegosaurus here. And since it was modeled so expertly, everything still looks really good, and we've got nice topology here, so we're looking good. So next thing we want to do is just hit C and get it out of this weird little thing null it creates for no reason. And so here we go, we've got this, and we're going to go to Volume Builder. As you can imagine, we're going to drag this into the Volume Builder, and instantly we get this really weird like 8-bit Stegosaurus. And basically this is determined by the voxel size. Now voxels are 3D pixels, so think of it like Mario is like an 8-bit thing. He is pixel art versus like Sonic the Hedgehog, who is like 32-bit, I think is what Sega Genesis was. So, you know, Sonic had a lot more detail than Mario, and that's kind of how we're dealing with this. The lower the voxel size, the more detail and the more voxels there's going to be. So the more pixels, the higher the res kind of thing. So one thing to keep in mind, my dog is barking, is that this is kind of what this is going to look like, okay? So things that, it's like 8-bit art and stuff like that. Things that are going to have a lot of curves and stuff are going to have these weird steps and stuff in them. So one thing we want to do to really get a good view of what this is going to look like is we're going to change this volume type to fog, okay? And now we've got these dots, and it's like really hard to tell what is actually going on until we do this magic thing that is new in R21 that's going to just make it all possible. So right now, I could grab this, I could go to File, Export, Export a VDB. Now, it's not going to do me any good because it has no density channels, it has nothing that actually has information that you need to render out a VDB. Until you right-click, you go to Material Tags, and you add a Volume tag. Now, it has a density channel it created on its own. So here we have this density channel we've created. We've got a good look at what this is going to look like. It looks nice and fluffy. So now we could export it out as a VDB with a channel. So this instantly created a channel for the density, the color, the emission. The emission is none. We're not setting that up. We can use your own maps. I even think you could use a material. I don't know a lot about the details of the volume tag for Pro Render and C4D, but I know that it has enough right now for what we need to do with Redshift. So we're going to pull it out of this fog just so we can kind of see what's going on here. Add a displacer, put that on there. Under the displacer, we're going to choose noise under the shader. That's a little crazy. We're going to go with a FBM. I'm going to choose the scale of 1,000, sorry. And we're going to up the octaves to about 8. And we look at this, and this looks like somebody, dried up our Stegosaurus into some sort of weird petrified Stegosaurus zombie. So we've got that, and we're going to go to our object, and we are going to just lower that down. We might have to, let's mess with the, let's mess with this. Let's change the seed some. Ooh, look at that one. Actually, that last one was a good one. There we go. So we've still got the rough shape of a Stegosaurus with these weird little things. And you don't want your clouds to be perfect, because clouds wouldn't be perfect, but you've got this kind of neat, fluffy geometry. Okay, I like the way this is looking. Let's see if we can turn it up anymore. Just a little bit. Like that. Okay. Perfect. I got it up to 11. Oh, nope. See, you got to notice, because things like this is now broken. Interesting. There we go. We did negative strength, and that actually looks better. We've got a couple floating things, but that's okay because we're making a cloud. Clouds are floaty. Okay, so now we've got the Stegosaurus. We've got it in our volume builder. Our volume builder, we can see now what it's going to look like. Okay, so what we need to do is go to File, Export, VDB. You can choose an animation here. If you had it animate, we could animate the noise. We could animate the voxels. So you can have it build on and stuff like that, or go from like low res, like a big block, down to a more refined shape like this. If you go from a high voxel number down to a small, there's lots of things you can do. It's just, the volume builder is really cool. But you can also save out an animation VDB and bring that in. But we're just going to do the still object for this. We're going to call this Dino. I wish there was a good cloud word that was sounded like DNA, but it didn't. I can't think of anything. So now we can go ahead and turn this off. We don't need it anymore, because we're going to go to Redshift, and we're going to go to Object Volume. Now you can do this with Pro Render and stuff. Like, you can actually render out this with Pro Render with the volume material that it has. If you go down here to Create Node Material Presets, if we go actually under Pro Render, Node Material Presets, Volume, then you'll see this little volume thing, and it like calculates the density and stuff like that. You can see this little preview of what it'll look like, and I don't know a lot about it, so I'm not going to show you how to do it, because I'd probably show you wrong. But just know that you can render out volumes in R21 without a third-party render engine. But we're going to use Redshift, because Redshift is crazy fast, and I've done the speed compare, and I'm not going to, just Redshift is awesome, that's all I'm going to say. So we've got this Redshift volume, and we're going to go to our path here, and we're going to bring in our object. Custom VDBs. We called that Dino Cloud. Voila, we have this beautiful rectangle. So you're going to need to twirl down this display and go to preview and go to points. Now you can slide this up, but be careful, because this slider apparently goes up to, I don't even know. I'm afraid to click down here because it will break your machine. But for me, like 250 is a good number. So I can see what my object will look like in the viewport now without it rendering down, slowing down my scene. So we've got this Stegosaurus ghost thing here. And what we can do is add a dome light. And under this dome light, we're going to go and add a sky map that's got clouds. You could use something from HDR Haven or just any kind of sky map you want. I'm going to use the sky maps from Andrew Kramer's flight kit from Video Copilot. And now what we can do is if we hit render under our IPR viewer, you'll see there's nothing there because we don't have our light affecting our volume, for one, and two, we don't have a volume material on our object. So let's do that first. So we're going to go to Create Redshift Materials Volume. Just like that, plop this on this Redshift Volume. We'll go ahead and hit render. And there's nothing there, and I'll tell you why. Because this is the cool thing, we're going to open up this Redshift Volume. And you can see we've got this Redshift Volume material here, and it's plugged straight into the output volume. And we have our basic scatter, absorption, and emission. Now underneath that is this thing called channel. And this isn't like normal materials. This is a VDB, like a volume exclusive type thing. And that's why I was saying if you export out the volume builder VDB before adding that tag, you will not have anything to put in that channel. But since we did use that tag and it made that density channel for us, when I click this, I have both the option of that density channel from the volume builder, but I also just have the option that came in with the VDB. So I'm going to click that. So now we have that as our scatter channel, and we're going to hit play, and you can see it's pitch black. And the reason it's pitch black is because our dome light does not affect our volume yet. So with Redshift lights, you need to have your contribution scale set so that it actually hits volume. And normally the way I do it with area lights and things, I will take a light and I will set the contribution scale to 1. It goes from 0 to 1, and I'll set it to 1. And then I'll adjust my environment or something, the scatter in that accordingly. But for some reason with dome lights, I guess because they are 360 degrees of light affecting the volume, your contribution scale needs to be extremely small, like 0.001 small. And now you'll see we get the color information from our sky map. And instantly we have this fluffy little Stegosaurus cloud just floating up in the sky. You can see where it's thinner. Oh, we'll really get into the details here, but you can see already just how this is going to look. So if we pump this up, I'm at 0.2 and it's just madness. 0.001 is a good number for that to get that color information in there. We might could go 0.002. Yeah, we'll go 0.002. That's fun. Okay, so now we need to worry about some of the material settings within this volume. So things we can play with, right? Let's slide this over here and slide this over here so we can see this at the same time. So what we can do is start messing around with the absorption and the scatter. So it's kind of like transmission and things like that. The scatter is the amount that it's going to bounce through the object, the light gets through it and it bounces around, boom, 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 boom. So it's scattering around along the cloud. And the absorption scale is how much the light gets killed inside the object. So the thicker pieces, the light only goes so far in before it dies. Like when you look in the ocean, when you're standing by the shore, you can see the ground, you can see the sand, and you can see your toes through the water. But when you're out in the ocean in a boat and you look down, you can't see the ocean floor because the light only goes down so far through it. So that's kind of what the absorption is like. So we can up that, and you'll see it really just starts absorbing that light. And so now we're the inside, we've got kind of a storm cloud stegosaurus. You can start to see these voxels on it, and see they're there because that's the way that the voxels work in this. That's the way the VDB is. But you can kind of hide those with light and stuff, and we'll talk about hiding that. They're not as obvious here. So if we do a lower absorption scale, you'll notice that all of a sudden our stegosaurus is pretty see-through. And he's getting pretty, lit. But we can do a mix of the two. So we can do a lower absorption scale and a lower scatter scale. And so now what we have is this weird see-through stegosaurus. So you can tell the light like coming through his neck where he's thinner, and through his little plates it's really thin and wispy, and then his body where it's thicker is more cloudy and hard to see through. So let's bring that back up here. And you can adjust the colors on these things. We're not going to go super in depth into this, but just know that scatter and absorption are going to be key to getting a look that you want, okay? So I've got it at 0.57 and 0.36. I kind of like the way this is looking. And one thing we can do is add another light to our scene real quick and back it up. Rotate that so it's blasting through our stegosaurus here. And we're going to go in here and under the volume, we're going to up that contribution scale up to 1. We're going to see what that looks like. And now you can see that's really blasting through the edges. And so now you can really get a good feel for what that absorption scale and that scatter is doing. So now we've got that. I'm actually going to mess around with the materials now that we have this light blasting on it. So I've got it down to 0.8 and we've got a scatter of 1. And this light is very bright. So we're going to actually turn it down to about 15. Maybe up to like 50. Maybe not that high, maybe 30. Yeah. So we want that rim from that. I really like the way that's coming through our object here. Now, one thing real quick with the dome light, what we can do is we don't actually want this sky map to render with our scene. So we're just going to uncheck enable background. And if you look at our scene right now, we've got an alpha channel, which is perfect because now we can take this and put it on any scene or put it in a video or track it or whatever you want to do. But we've got this cloudy stegosaurus, and I will say there's some fun things you can do to render this. Let's say we'll go to Redshift Render Viewer. We'll go to the settings real quick, and we'll play with these. We'll say bloom. We'll turn that on. We'll lower the threshold of that. And I like to have a little glow around that. I feel like clouds normally have like a little glow to them, you know. There's something about the way they bounce the light around. It just makes them glow just the teeniest bit. Okay, now let's talk about how to render this out. So to render this, we're going to go in here under Redshift. And normally I say don't touch these unified sampling things, but it does affect the Redshift volume. Even if you go down here and you override it, the light and the volume samples without upping this, it doesn't work. This, we'll go back to the default here so we can see what I'm talking about. Okay, we'll hit render on this. And you can see right here, there's all these fireflies. Okay, you can see them real bad on that tail. So what we want to do is just up this, even though our samples are very high on this, we're going to up this to 64, and we're going to up this to 128. We're going to lower this to 0.003. And we're going to scroll down, and we're going to leave this at 512 instead of 507. We're going to lower this light down to 256 because we don't really need it to be at 512 either. So here we go. Let's hit render now. You can already go ahead and see the difference. There's like maybe a little bit of firefly there. Let's see, this tail is really bad. A tiny bit for sure. Voila, the bloom, the glow. Nice cut out cloud. It's got the, I didn't save it as an alpha pass, but so one thing I added was the denoiser, and that's here under the effects, and that's an R21 thing. It's just going to kind of clean it up a little bit after, just in case. You don't have to do that. I like to do it sometimes with stuff with bloom and stuff. It just kind of smooths it out and gives it this, helps with those voxels that you saw. So now if you want to save this out with an alpha channel inside of Redshift, you pick your PNG or your TIFF or your EXR. The main thing you have to do is click alpha channel. Okay, and then so when you hit render, it's going to come out. And if you go over here to layer, you have single pass, and you can see that there's an alpha channel layer. There you go. So that you'll have that information as well. And you can say to save it out separately if you want. But there we go. So now we can take this stegosaurus and put them in a scene. Okay, so I've brought in our little Stegosaurus cloud here. And we're going to see if we can blend him in. Ta-da! That's pretty good. Okay, so let's take our light, our area light. Where is that at? Let's turn this off. Let's make it match our scene. It's going to be over here. Oops, I'm going this way. There we go. Okay. Go back. Go. Okay, render. So now we can up that light a bit. There we go. Look. Look at that. We've blent. We've created a Stegosaurus cloud. It's beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. So now if you make other clouds and stuff, you know, you can get whatever angle you want. You can have them flying through the sky. Beautiful. So we could, you know, take our Stegosaurus here and really bring them closer. You know. Look at that. Beautiful. Pretty cool. So there you go. You've got this, you know, a cloud, and you got it looking like a cloud. It helps to bring in an image. If you want to know how I brought in that image under the dome light, there's a thing called backplate. You need to enable your background and turn on backplate, and that's where I brought in that image, and that just kind of puts it in there for you as a backplate. So now we have that lighting to kind of work with and try to match. It really helps just kind of create a good fog look. Look at that. I'm excited by those results. It looks fantastic. How it's thinner up here on his plates, but his body's thicker. Really, really nice. Really, really fun. We can mess with the bloom a little bit. You know, we can take it up. Let me take a look at it without the bloom. But I think the bloom really just helps just to kind of pop those highlights and kind of blur those imperfections just a little bit there. Pretty fun. There we go. Nice. Pretty neat. So hope you had fun creating this. I also animated the displacement on this guy. So if we hit play, this would work if I had a footage of clouds rather than one image, but we can tell this is doing if we look at it here. I have it moving slowly but surely. It is moving. Can't play it back smoothly. I will render it out. And we can take a look at that. Okay. Thanks for watching. Hope you have fun with this. Feel free to share on my Facebook or tag me on Instagram if you make something like this. I'd love to see it. See you next time.